Okay, so we are back to Mishlei, and we are up to Mishlei 1622. Mekor Chaim Seichel Ba'alav Umusar Evilim Ivelis. This is an interesting one here. A lot of just Mishlei terms thrown together. All right, who wants to try to translate this? Anyone could just jump right in.
The source of life is the um the intellect of its owners, like its
Okay.
owners.
Umusar Evilim Ivelis.
And oh the mm, there's a hard word to translate to me.
Yeah.
The like I don't know what it means, like the conduct but the rebuke maybe.
Okay, so
Uh,
I'll tell you the term I like to translate for mussar. So mussar has two general, I guess, varieties of usage. Sometimes mussar refers to a subject matter, like Mishlei is a book of mussar, and then sometimes mussar refers to a specific type of statement, like a rebuke. So the word I find that encompasses both of them is discipline. And I know that's not the most accurate, like it's not going to convey each one great, but you could discipline someone, or you could like have the study of, you could call it ethical discipline if you want, but yeah. So the discipline of,
of a foolish one is foolish.
yep. So the Evilium, so that's Mishlei fools, is foolishness. Okay, so I'm gonna tweak the intro, the first half a little bit. So Makor is either the source. So Makor means source, but I think the primary meaning is like fountain, okay, or wellspring. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and use the Hebrew translation here. The Makor, so the fountain, wellspring, or source of life. Now, you translated it in the order of the pasuk. So the Makor of life is the intellect of its owners. I think the majority of Mefarshim actually reverse it. So what they say is the intellect is a Makor, is a source, wellspring, or fountain of life to its owners. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and stick with that because I think that reads smoother. And if we see someone who says opposite, then we'll add that. Okay. And the discipline of Evilim is foolishness. Okay, and or bud. Okay, so let's look at our minimalist commentators here. So we got the Sadigon translation. He says Hasechel lepoalav makor chaim umusar ha'evilim ivaltam. So I think the way he's translating it is the intellect to its makers or doers. I don't know. I mean, poal is to make or to do, is a source of, or if I'll just say, is a makor of life. Umusar ha'ivilim ivaltam, and or but the discipline of the fools is their foolishness. Okay, the Targum I think is just a straight translation. Mabui dechaye suchla demare. So a wellspring of life is the seichel, is the intellect demare of its owner or master. Umar duse deshatye shatyusa. And the discipline of fools is foolishness. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that because that's pretty much the same. Okay, then we got Art Scroll, which says intelligence is a source of life to its possessor, but the discipline of foolish one's foolishness. So I think they just take out the is because they want to keep it straight here. The JPS 1985 translation says good sense, that's how they're translating seichel, is a fountain of life to those who have it. And folly is the punishment of fools. Okay, so they're using discipline as in like like corporal punishment type discipline. Okay. Fine. And then Alter says insight. I don't know where he gets insight from as a seichel, but that's how he's clearly how he's translated. Is a wellspring of life to its possessors. In fact, I'm just going to take out fountain. Okay, I think wellspring encompasses both. And but the reproof of the folly is of the foolish is folly. So that's interesting. The mussar. Oh, so that's actually interesting. The mussar evilim is evelis. Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, all right. So that is reflected in what we're saying also. All right. So let's just delete these because I think these are similar enough, and then we'll keep this on the screen. And then we will have our questions. Now, I'm just going to say I am traveling, so I don't have my monitor with me, which means, I mean, always raising your hand is a good idea on the hand raise feature, but I'm not going to see everyone at the same time. So if you want to be noticed, then use your hand raise feature. Yeah, Isaiah.
What struck me here is the first half seems like there's like extra rhetorical layers that basically why say that it's a source of life? Why not just say seichel is a good thing? Like saying something is a source of life to its owner just sounds like it's good. Like
Yeah. Okay. So we'll put this into two questions, the direct question and then the broader question. So the direct question is, what do we mean by mikor chaim, um, uh, which is wellspring or source of life? Um, or not what do we mean? What is the meaning of that? Okay, and then the second part of your question is like, what is this saying beyond, it's good or it provides good? Um, and why be, I think this is what you started off asking, why be so poetic in the first half when in the first half when the second doesn't, is straightforward. I don't mean that we know what it means straightforward. I mean that like it's not using any fancy language or metaphors. Yeah, and I'm putting that as part of this question because I don't think that question necessarily deserves to be on its own, but I think it is part of what you were noticing about the usage of the metaphor here. Okay, Rivki.
So this might be like slight sort of interpretation already in a question.
Oh no, yeah.
But I'm curious why in the second half, like it says like the mussar is foolishness. Like I feel like my understanding of mussar is that whether we translate it in one of the two ways you were saying, they're both positive things.
Yeah. Okay, good. So we'll just ask the general thing is what is the meaning of the mussar. I'm gonna go ahead and put the word mussar here. The mussar. Okay, the mussar of Evilim is foolishness. Okay. And I'll say especially given the fact that we generally say that mussar is a good thing. Okay. It's the whole purpose of this book. Okay. Yeah. All right, that's good. Yeah, Ayala.
So on that question, but what exactly is the mussar of Avilim? And is it mussar given by Avilim or to Avilim?
Right. Okay, good. So I'm actually going to just add that here. So what is the mussar of Avilim? Yeah. Is it mussar given to Evilim or mussar that they like give or practice? Did you say something, a different possibility also, or just those two?
Just those two.
Okay,
But I
yeah.
also want to know what it means, I guess, besides for the fact that it's foolishness. I don't know if that's necessary to break the question down
Oh,
further,
yeah. Right. Okay, so I agree with you that we should divide that into two questions. So what is mussar of Evilim? Okay, and then what does it mean that the mussar of Evilim is foolishness, especially given the fact that we generally say mussar is positive? Okay, good. Yeah, that is a proper way to ask the question. Yeah, Reza.
Is there a difference between the quality of Makor being like an attribute of the possessor in the first half, and then the quality in the second half, which is foolishness being like a discipline? So like comparing an attribute versus like a discipline.
Okay. All right. That's a good question. So I think we need to ask a question before we ask that, which is what is the nature of the relationship between the attribute of Mikor Chaim to
like a descriptor, and then
the possessor of intellect. Okay. Yeah. What is the nature of the relation between the attribute of Mikor Chaim to the possessor of the intellect? That's a very complex question. Okay, and then we can ask, what is the relationship between? Oh, this is such a confusing question. I mean, I'm just trying to word it. Because what you're saying is you're asking, Makor Chaim, the wellspring of life, the intellect as wellspring of life to its owners. How does that compare to the discipline, the foolishness to the discipline of the fools, or something like that, right?
Right, because the Mekor is not being described as a discipline of its owners. It's being described as like a source of life to them. So it's not as if they're doing a habit, which is surprising because you'd expect them to be doing some kind of habit that would allow them to have that quality.
Yeah, I'm going to cheat, okay? And I'm going to say like this, and I will try to express your question in a second, but I'm going to cheat first, which is, let me actually make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to say, what is how are the two halves opposites? How are the two halves opposites? And then as part of that question, I'll say the relationship between the intellect as a Makor Chaim to its possessor isn't quite parallel with the relationship between mussar, evilim, and their foolishness. All right, so that's my best thing shot at asking the question. Yeah. By the way, in case anyone's wondering why my autocorrect keeps on autocorrecting Chaim to be capital, it's because one of my students is Chaim and spells it that way, so it keeps on changing it to his name. It makes me laugh every time I see it. Yeah, Rivki?
That's very funny. Mine is not as complicated, so it'll be easier to write.
Okay.
So my question was just about alav versus evilim. Like, I just found that was interesting that we have a categorization for a person in one half, but the other is just very personal.
Okay, yeah, I am actually going to categorize that under this two halves question because I think it's relevant to the opposites. So why is the standard Mishleic archetype of evilim contrasted with the non-archetype of possessor of intellect, right? Which seems oddly descriptive. I'm gonna say, is this a Mishleic personality or several, or is it a Mishleic precursor? For example, meaning, let's say, obviously someone who becomes a chacham, who becomes wise, needs an intellect. So are you, before you're a chacham, are you just someone who possesses intellect and then you become a chacham? Where is this? Okay, Mom.
I think possibly my question has been covered, but in the JPS translation, folly is the consequence of fools. I'm bothered or curious about the word. I'm curious about the word punishment because that's a consequence of a fool's action.
Mm-hmm.
And the other half of it is is the consequence a fountain of life to the owners who possess good sense? I don't understand that part.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know where to put that.
Yeah, I also don't know where to put that. So let's start off with that, which is, did we ask? Let's actually just ask this as a question. What does mussar mean in this context? I know this kind of implicit in our question, but is it the, let's say, rebuke, punishment, or the, I guess, let me think for 1 second here what to call it. System of ethics they practice. I think those are the three types of the translations. I just realized I forgot to copy and paste the translation into the chat. So let me just do that first. Okay, so there's this. And then there is the Sadi Gaon and JPS. Okay. Okay. Okay, what else? Yeah, Ayala?
So what is the practical application / also what is the subject?
Right. Okay. Yeah, those are very important here. Oh, I hate when it does this. Okay, hold on. Let's do this, this. Okay. What is the practical application? And I'm gonna say of each half, because this is gonna either be like, well, actually, fine, yeah. We'll just leave it that way. And then what is the subject? What is the subject? Right? What is this pasuk about? Yeah, Rifki?
So this also could have been covered already, but I just feel like the like Avilim, Avilas, whatever, like it just sounds redundant. Again, I don't know if we covered that, but I'm trying to see what is that actually adding to the character or like that type of person. Like what is it telling?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So there is I'll translate that into a question with a term here. Okay, I'll say, moreover, this seems like a tautology, right? Meaning that it's like using, I always forget the formal definition of tautology. It's a statement that doesn't really mean anything, but a tautology is the saying of the same thing twice in different words. Okay, and it's like it's not a fallacy, but it's they characterize as a fault of style. So for example, there's no need to say return back to, because that's what return means. So in other words, like, we already know that the Evilim, are defined by Ivelis. So what more is the second half saying? Is that what's bothering you? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Isaiah? Oh, yeah, sorry. No, Rivki, you have something else? Okay. Yeah, Isaiah?
Why does it refer to like an owner of seichel instead of just some like using seichel or someone who uses their seichel?
Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and that should be its own question. Okay. Well, let's first ask, what does seichel, intellect, or intelligence mean in this context? And then why frame it as one who possesses seichel? Isn't the important thing using it, not having it? Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, I feel like those are the main questions. So I'm going to start copying and pasting them. I feel like this is going to need 3. Yeah, Isaiah, you have another one? I can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Oh, I heard something, but
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
I can
you hear me now?
I think
Okay.
so.
Just to emphasize that last question, like even in Evel, like has the seichel. He has
right.
it. He just doesn't necessarily use it properly. So, like, what's up with that? That doesn't
Okay,
what do we mean by an owner of a seichel?
Yeah, all right, good. I'll add that. Okay, I'm not gonna add that to the chat, but I will add that to the question here. So, yeah. Moreover, doesn't everyone possess an intellect, even the Avil? Yeah. Okay. This is a toughie. Let's think. Take a thinking minute. Oh, also, since it's been so long and since not everyone was here, I also just want to read the context, the surrounding pasukim, because I think they are related. Not that we need to factor them in, but just in case it jogs anyone's thoughts here. Okay, so we had. Hold on. Yeah. Makor Chaim. Oh, sorry. One before this, so the one before this was a very important one. Maskil al davar yimtza tov uboteach b'Hashem ashrav. So one who undertakes a matter intelligently will find good, but one who trusts in Hashem is happy. And by the way, If anyone did not, I know there were only a couple people here last time. Anyone who missed this year, I recommend listening to every Mishlei, learning every Mishlei pasuk. This year happened to have been particularly good, especially if you're interested in the topic of how to trust in God. So it was a very important year. We went over a lot of fundamental ideas. Okay, and then next week's pasuk, I guess that was 2 weeks ago. Last week's pasuk was L'chacham lev yikare navon umesek sefasayim yosif lakach. To the wise of heart, that he will be called an understanding person, and the sweetness of the lips will increase learning. Okay, then we have our pasuk, and then next week is Lev Chacham Yaskil Pihu Valsfasav Yosif Lakach, very similar to the previous one. So a lot of these pasukim are about intelligence and speech. So yeah, not that necessarily helps, but okay. Alrighty. So does anyone? We need more time to think. Let's take more time to think. Okay, good. Someone has something. Rifki, you want to start?
I don't know if it's anything like crazy, but I actually have a question before.
Okay.
Which is, do you think that we could be using mussar as like almost like facetiously, or is that not a possibility?
Funny you should mention that. I'm going to show you something that I don't know what it means, but I just saw when I was copying and pasting in the chat. Saad Yagon in his commentary says, and by the way, I did not have time to prepare this today, which is I threw the source sheet together last minute. So Saad Yagon says, Rotza bezeh mahi hashkafas haschalim. This means to say that this is the outlook of the fools. Okay, so I'm not going to finish translating his commentary, but I saw that and I was like, I wonder if this is one of the facetious psukim where it's like telling you, it's telling you something as if it's true, but it's really like articulating the mentality of the fool. So if you have an intuition, then run with that. It seems like a good company. Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was going with it, because it didn't make sense to me to say that it was a real one, like a real mussar. Again, whether it's mussar of like a specific like rebuke or just mussar in general.
Yeah.
I'll start with that half because I think that's where my intuition was going.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I just realized another question,
Okay.
which maybe someone mentioned this in passing, but part of the opposites here is, what role does mussar play in the first half? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I was thinking, it actually made me think of like a quote, which was like the one about like you can't like pull yourself up by your hair, like that idea that like if you're
never heard that one, but it sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, but whatever. Like the point is like obviously if you're using the same resources that you have and you possess in order to make something better that you're struggling with, that's not going to help. Like you need some outside source, and even if that changes yourself like internally, which then gives you a new ability. So that's kind of how I was taking that, like their mussar, like their rebuke, which is to be helping them, because that's how we understand rebuke, is like their own foolishness. Like they think like, oh, like, I next time I'll do this and this and this, or maybe the problem was this. Like they're not using mussar in the way that we are, or hopefully that we are, in order to like really grow and understand. Like we've spoken about this in other pasukim where you have to reflect on. I know you've been given this example with the magic game that. Sorry, I just couldn't remember the name.
That's fine.
But that you have to analyze not just what you didn't do, but what you could have done better.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're missing. And that's why it's saying like their rebuke is foolishness in and of itself. Because even when they really try, they're still not going to be able to get anywhere, because they're not having that mindset of like, oh, like what could I have done better, or what did I do wrong? Because they just don't have that ability.
Okay, so let me try getting down into words, and I think that sets us up very well for the first half. I don't know if you have an idea for the first half, but so for the second half, I guess I've just never heard of this statement before. So it's just a funny imagery. You're right, you can't. Okay.
I've heard pulling yourself up from the bootstraps.
Yeah, right, but that they usually say as a good thing, right?
Yeah,
like
I think I've heard it as a negative.
You've heard
Like
negative?
you can't pull yourself up from your bootstraps.
Interesting. I've heard it only positive. I'm not gonna look it up right now. So in other words, so if I'm gonna add something, Rifki, here. So Evilim who hate mussar, okay, and I'm comfortable putting that. Usually you shouldn't like mix and match Mishlei. Like you should learn each pasuk on its own. But the opening thesis of Mishlei is Yiras Hashem Reishis Das Chachma Mussar Evilim Bazu. That fear of Hashem is the beginning of knowledge, and Evilim despise wisdom and discipline. Okay, so that's like the premise of Mishlei, and that's like every Mishlei is aiming at fear of Hashem, and which is, fear of Hashem is the discipline of wisdom. That's what it says in Mishlei 15:33. And then Evilim reject that. Okay, so since they reject, who hate, real mussar, okay, are still going to try to improve their lot. And since they are avoiding mussar that will actually make them develop, they'll use the same bad tools that got them into the situation, into their present dilemma. Okay, that is foolishness. Okay, so this is, the proverb I think about, which I'll add here, even though you didn't say it, Rifki, is it's not the same thing, but it reminds me, insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. Okay, now it's not the same thing like, it's not the same thing because that's talking about like making the same mistake over and over and over again, but it's like, if you're not changing anything in the equation, then why are you expecting to get different results? Like if you make a mistake and then you seek out knowledge or you seek out guidance or you like try to find someone who's like, can show you that you're not being objective. So then you have some new thing that you're factoring in that could lead to a new result. But if you're just working with the same tools that you've been working with before, of course you're not going to help yourself, Okay, good. Now you want to say the first half?
Yeah, so I think it kind of flows, and a pun is intended actually,
Ah.
well from this second half, because it, obviously a wellspring or, source, I think that it's continuous. So it
Yeah.
also like builds upon itself. And so a person who, and I think I also have an answer for why it doesn't give a specific character here, but a person who uses their intellect in order to analyze that situation, whatever it may be, and then understand like, oh, like I could have done this and I could have done this. I think that's also where the mussar half comes in, like with your question of where does mussar come in, is that they have genuine mussar. It's not like the facetious mussar that's talked about in the second half.
Yeah.
That's what the wellspring is that when you employ real mussar, then you're going to get a continuous learning and growth experience, which will propel you in life in whatever situation you're in. And then I think also why it's just Allah, it's not anyone specific, I think just is literally what Isaiah was saying, that like everyone has a seichel. It's just a question of whether or not you're going to use it. So if you're using it, you don't necessarily have to be like a chassid or a tzaddik in order to implement this trait.
Okay, good. So I'm gonna make a textual move here, which I think will help. I think the way you have to read it is that you can infer from the first half and from the definition of avil that the mussar in the second half is mussar that is devoid of seichel, that is without intelligence, and you can infer from the fact that the mussar, that the seichel is a source of life to its owners in the first half, means that it's a source of life via mussar. So in other words, this is like a standard Mishlei move where you take each piece of each pasuk of each half and you put it on into the other half. So in other words, let me just give it a reading. Okay, reading based on this interpretation is the intellect is a source of life to its owners via the discipline they derive from it, but the mussar of I'll just use the term mussar here, but the mussar of Evilim, okay, which is devoid of intellect, since they hate chachma, is foolishness. Yeah. Okay. I just want to think, let's just come up with a practical real world example. And what I want to do also is I want to sharpen the practical application, and like, is this just a general thing of you should, embrace the lifestyle that revolves around the intellect and reject a lifestyle that is that of an avil, or is this giving you more particular practical advice? Let's think about that. I think grounding an example will help. I don't have a particular example in mind, but I do want to give an example in a non-threatening type of example. But if you've ever like take a craft that is possible for a complete beginner to try to do, and like without guidance, and then on the other end of the spectrum there are real experts. Let's say like cooking. Okay, so like anyone can take ingredients and like try to cook something, but there are ways to do it that have been studied and mastered by experts, so like if you maybe I'm exampling myself into the corner here. No, I don't want to start with that example. Never mind. Anyone have a good example?
How about dancing?
Okay.
Like you can, you can do the steps, but when you learn dancing from a professional, you start to learn about the finer points of head weight or balance, or and you realize that can improve your dancing so much that you hadn't thought about, like even the direction that you're looking in when you dance makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good example. I'm going to give another example, and this is an emotionally charged example, but I think it's just unfortunately true, is davening, okay? Is that, tefillah, prayer, right? Is that there's so many Jews who want to get better at davening, they want to have a better davening experience. But you know what the biggest mistake is? And I'm not saying this is true for all of them, but they never actually study davening. They never actually like try to learn ideas about davening. So it's like they're sitting there and they are, it's almost it's like they think that if they just keep on doing the activity, somehow it's going to get better, and yeah, there are aspects of it that get better, like you'll become more fluent in reciting the words, but it's not actually going to become a more transformative experience unless you add something new to the equation. So if you have someone who wants to get better at davening, but they hate learning about davening, so then good luck. Like you're just not going to get there, and so whereas if you had a person who is constantly trying to supplement their davening practice through seichel, through applying intelligence, whether it's like learning something or thinking about something or like just getting the facts or whatever, then that's going to be, you need to get the flow going in that way, not the best example, but one that a lot of religious Jews can relate to. Okay. Yeah, Rifki?
Yeah, I think that like while you were saying that, something else just clicked, which I think the difference, or maybe one of the big differences between the avil and then someone who's using seichel, is I feel like the emotion attached to the ego. Because I was thinking about myself and I was like, oh, like I have a lot of examples of like me. I'm like, this isn't good. Like, and I was thinking, okay, well, why do I do this? And it's because of emotion. Like, yeah. It's because you want to think that what you're doing is the right thing to be doing. But once you actually remove that emotion and you think like, oh, what should I be doing? And someone's giving you that advice, like, yeah. Obviously, I mean, you would hope someone is. So I think that's like the key factors if you're able to remove your like ego from your intellect, and that's really the key.
Okay, so I'm going to agree with you in idea, but disagree with you in applying it to this pasuk, because I think there are a lot of pasukim that talk about how the downfall of the avil is because of ego. This one seems to be saying that they're trying to get their mussar from the wrong source, meaning they're trying to get their mussar not from the wellspring of intellect, but they're trying to get it from the inert tools of their own folly. So I feel like correct idea, but I don't think that's what this is saying the main thing is. Yeah. Okay, let's I like this idea. So let's leave this here, and if we come up with a better example than my tefillah example, that's really what I want for this idea, is a better example, and then to just be able to translate it more into practical. Well, let's take a crack really quickly at what would be the practical application here, like, not just apply your mind, but I mean, maybe Rifki, you're right that we are not. I don't think anyone who's in this shiur right now. I mean, I know no one in this shiur right now is a full-blown Avil, right? But we all have, there's a little bit of all the Mishlei archetypes in all of us. So there's parts of us where we just refuse to take input from the wellspring of seichel, and just insist on doing things the way that they've been done, or the way that we've like tried to do it before, and then keep getting bad results. So I think like one application is to examine yourself for areas where you've closed the valve of seichel, and are attempting to improve your situation without that input. Okay. And realize that you need new perspectives, new understanding, more objectivity, etc., in order to get the improvement flowing again. Okay. And I think that's, again, I think this is an area that comes up a lot. Like, people have this in their work sometimes, where like they're stagnating in their work, they're stagnating in their development of a certain skill. It could be in a relationship, it could be in in a psychological thing that you're working with. Like, you're stagnating, and like this is trying to get you to realize, like, am I trying to draw from a well that is not, that the seichel thing is not turned on? And again, I know it's like a funny metaphor, but yeah, you just need to keep the knowledge and the insight flowing, and many times that's the problem. You need to like infuse it with something new. So yeah. Okay, good. All right, let's put this on the side burner now. Isaiah, you're up.
Can I add
All
to
right.
that idea?
Oh, sure. Sorry. Yeah. Again, I don't know if you were doing the party thing. I didn't see it. But
Yeah, all good.
okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I was just gonna say that, to me, like, the two halves kind of seem like a spectrum, right? That like the Avil won't even listen to discipline from an outside source, and the first half is like the person who doesn't
That's
even
good.
need an outside source; they could use their intellect themselves. So I think part of the practical application based off of that may be that, like, depending on where you are in the spectrum, like maybe an inroad, if you find yourself like completely like closed off from seichel in an area, it's like start at the other end of the spectrum of like try to get advice or discipline from someone else. And then, I mean, for some people, I guess that could be harder, depending on the situation. But I think it could kind of be a little bit easier than trying to like fully apply.
Okay, I think that's, I like the spectrum view. And then the tip, I agree, is is going to be hard for someone who is an Avil to get it from someone else. I think the only inroad for the Avil is to get it from himself, because of the problem Rifki mentioned, because of his ego. But yeah, sometimes if you're struggling, get it from the other end of the spectrum. Yeah. Okay, Isaiah, go ahead.
All right. So it's interesting that you kind of deduce that the source of this is like a source of bad mussar.
Yeah.
I had like a slightly different way of reading it that I think also makes sense in that way. Is that maybe the pasuk is talking about, this is like a method of like Mishlei skepticism, where if you hear mussar from someone, especially if you think that they might be an Avil, or that this is a certain, they have like tendencies of Evalis. So then, like, you shouldn't accept that. You obviously you would think it's obvious that you shouldn't accept that mussar, but like sometimes when you hear what seems to be a solution to your problem, or like something that will help you out, I think it's like tempting to take that solution, because people are like looking for solutions to their problems.
Right.
So what this pasuk is telling you is like, you have a seichel, you should be on alert for these kind of things and draw on that when you're when you're in a situation where like someone is telling you like knowledge that may or may not be helpful. So be skeptical of like the mussar that's coming from someone else.
Okay, so the first half is telling you to. So you're learning that this is describing one scenario, and the scenario is hearing mussar evilim, and it's telling you use the note that it's coming from the evilim, and then check it against the source of real insight that you definitely have, which is your own seichel.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first half is telling you to use that as a clue, as a red flag. Treat that as a red flag. To treat that. Oh, sorry. Hold on a second. The second half is telling you to treat that as a red flag, and the first half is telling you how to examine it, namely with your own intellect, and which is the best tool that you have. Okay, so like example of this, examples of this is I think right wing conspiracy theory advice, and it's right now. I mean, there are times in history where the problem is coming from the left wing with the conspiracy theories. Here, I feel like the right falls prey to a lot more conspiracy theories about practical things. And so when you see someone giving advice in that area, and they have evil tendencies. So if you hear, for example, like an Alex Jones, who's like peddling some remedy, that's an evil, and so you should examine it with your own seichel. Yeah. So the interesting thing, what I started to have resistance to before is, and I'm just going to state this as a question, even though it's not really a question here, is what about ezehu chacham ha lomed mikol adam, okay, which means who is wise, one who learns from everyone. So doesn't that mean you should learn even from the evilim? So the answer is yes, but the red flag is still warranted. All right, because and is important because you'll examine the advice as someone who is coming from, as something coming from an avil. I know that just sounds like I'm re-saying the facts, but who doesn't make decisions based on like rationality or long-term consequences. So in other words, like if you heard a piece of advice coming from someone you trust and has a good reputation as a thinker, you might not understand it, and you'll strive to learn whatever you can from it. But if it's coming from an avil, you should specifically look for ways in which it's flawed that would come from an avil. So it is telling you like a target to like look for. So yeah, you still should try to learn from them, but beware of that. I do want to come up with a specific example. If anyone has a good example of this, where I'm looking for an example of something. Let me just do a better example where in isolation, it seems like good advice, but then when we realize it comes from an avil, then we see that it's you're right to be suspect. I mean, here's an example which I can never. I always like see this on TV shows. Okay, is I understand why people use like illegal drugs, okay, because they want to feel good or they want to escape or whatever it is, like their motives, okay. I understand that. What I don't understand is in the movies when people are partying and someone hands them a random pill and they just take it, like the even a person who has chosen that lifestyle like should research what they're taking and what the effects are going to be and stuff like that. So if you're at a rave and someone hands you a pill, well, this guy's an avil. This is a person who is just like, pleasure seeking and not thinking about consequences. So why? And so when you tell yourself, oh, well, like they wouldn't hand it to me and advise me to take this if it weren't safe. Well, yeah, they would. They're an avil. They're not thinking about these things. Like they might have just got, they might make this mistake also, so it's just like, it just is a dumb thing to do Whereas if your doctor hands you a pill that you don't understand, then you rely on your doctor because that's not coming from an avil, you know? And in both cases, it's someone saying, here's a pill you don't understand anything about, take it and it'll be good. But like in one case, you have the red flag makes you investigate, whereas the other case, then you rely on the expertise. I'm just going to say this, taking a random pill from a druggie, is that how you spell druggie? No, druggie partier. All right, fine. Yeah. Okay. Good idea, Isaiah. Up to Reza now.
Okay, so while reading this, the word curiosity kept coming into my mind. So I'm wondering if an avil would not have curiosity, and I'm kind of equating the quality of curiosity with it being the reason to consult the wellspring of the intellect. So if a person doesn't have curiosity, they would continue to practice their skill or craft like on the same level, kind of like that analogy of the castle or fortress with like the different levels you gave in the beginning a while ago. So I think this might be a reason that these two halves are like juxtaposed. So the first part is saying that there's like a quality that like a reason for a person to want to consult an energy source that would like level them up. And then the second half is about someone who like might just like run in circles and never have a desire to access some energy that would like elevate them.
Okay, I like that. That's an interesting diagnosis of an avil. I would agree with that. That
I don't really understand what it is. This is like a speculation.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think the support for what you're saying about an avil is the same pasuk I quoted earlier, which is that avilim hate mussar and they also hate chachma. They hate thinking. They hate knowledge. So because an avil hates chachma, which is wisdom, then he won't. It's really a matter of he won't like
There's not a desire to
trust, like
to
or value
like the desire to learn more is like curiosity. It's like knowing that no matter how solid your habits are, like you still need something that pushes you to acquire more knowledge, even if you have a great habit already in place.
Yeah, habits and lifestyle. So I wrote, because an avil hates chachma, he won't trust or pursue or value curiosity, since that will only threaten his security in his own habits and lifestyle. And the first half is describing where a person who has curiosity goes, which is the intellect, the only tool we have, or not the only tool, but the primary tool, because we also have senses and imagination, but the primary tool we have for pursuing our curiosity and getting results. Okay, I feel like I'm missing something from your idea. What was what am I not remembering?
Well, every time I read this, I kept thinking about like the word curiosity kept coming into my mind. Like the intellect is like the word wellspring kind of insinuates that it's a source of energy. It's like a push towards a higher level. And the word discipline makes me think of just something repetitive without a source or like a need to elevate.
Yeah, so I agree with you about the first half. I can see how discipline, if you take it as like punishment type discipline or like rote behaviors, then it would be without that sort of like curiosity and or without that like
it's stagnant.
Yeah, being stagnant. I could definitely see that. I do think that is the type of mussar it's talking about for them, but I would not say that is the connotation of the word in general, because in general, then that's what the book of Mishlei is about. Yeah. Okay, so the question is, what is the practical application of this approach?
Of my approach in
Yeah.
general?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say that it's important to always look for blind spots and continue questioning rather than getting like too comfortable. But this is only because like I was equating the word discipline to like a habit or stagnation.
Right.
And assuming that mussar can not always be one. It's not like a permanent quality. Like
Well, I think you could still salvage your idea from the words by saying it's not mussar that is the problem, it's the mussar of evilim,
Mm,
right? Because the way you were saying it, then it's just all mussar. But I'm saying no, it's mussar of evilim.
yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I'll put the look for blind spots because that is good. Look for blind spots, which is similar to the application from Isaiah. Blind spots when you are not tapping into curiosity and stagnating with mussar evilim.
Basically, don't become too confident in your habits that you can't accept any kind of suggestion or criticism.
Yeah. To the point where you are closed to, it's really more than just criticism, it's to new infusions of like, I guess new, close to curiosity. I mean, you said it best the first time, right? Yeah. All right, I think that's good. Okay, next is my mom.
Just a minor point. When you say knowledge and learning, that's knowing and learning things that are good but also not good, and ways to go and ways not to go. So you know okay, like, and also the point that you made about that you brought up about the druggie at the party and all that. I've never been to a rave, which you should know, but also I've watched the movies, and the people at the party, as soon as they see what kind of scene they're in, they're gonna know, they're gonna want to, they're there for to experience something that they're missing or think they're missing out on or whatever it is. So they're going to, and it's a party where obviously drugs are, present. It's not the same as a doctor giving you a pill and saying, okay, if you take this, this is what's going to happen to you. They want to be in the moment and have that emotion, and to fill up whatever they're feeling there they don't have.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is that, knowledge and learning is in any way, what to do, what not to do, what to know, what not to know. That's all part of knowledge and learning.
Yeah.
So that's when then comes your discretion and your experience and your willingness to tap into this to see which path not to go in and
yeah. I think that fits into a lot of these points because I think that is
it's acceptable, but for somebody who's a rookie at this, I
was just gonna elaborate on what you were saying. Do you want me to elaborate?
Okay.
Or?
Yeah,
I was going to say
please.
that I think it fits into a lot of these points because the Avil is not going to want to the reason why the Avil hates Chachma and Mussar is because those two things threaten his lifestyle that he's clinging to, and so opening yourself to new ideas for good or for bad, can do that. And the nature of knowledge is that you never know what you're going to get. You never know if the thing that you learn is going to lead to you, to becoming better at doing what you're doing or realizing that you're making a huge mistake. So he won't open himself up to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you learn something? Can I ask a question? Can you learn something in a certain situation that's not necessarily good, but it works out for you in that situation?
Yeah.
And then you continue using it for, future. And then all of a sudden, as you get older and more experienced or whatever it is, you realize, whoa, that's not good.
Yeah, that's a very common mistake which is tied to what we've talked about in the past of results-oriented thinking, where just because you do an action and get a result doesn't mean that, first of all, it doesn't mean that your action caused the result. And even if it did, it doesn't mean that that's something that you should rely on, meaning just because you bought a lottery ticket and won doesn't mean that buying lottery tickets is a good use of your money. You got lucky that time, but that doesn't mean that that's the good thing to do. Or just because you didn't wear your seatbelt and you got into a car accident and didn't get hurt doesn't mean that not wearing your seatbelt is a good decision. So yeah, you can end up getting seduced by the result and then making that decision to a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, there's also, one more thing. So there's also the addict that goes to rehab and says, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get out of here, not whatever, I'm going to do whatever it takes to manage my addiction.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
Okay, so let's do a couple commentaries. I think I'm going to wrap it up a little bit early tonight, but we'll see what we get. Again, I have not had a chance to look at these commentaries tonight. So Metzudas David says, Haseichel hu lebalav k'mayan hanovea chayim. The intellect is to its possessor like a wellspring flowing with life. Ki ba'avuro balo chayim, because life comes to him from it. Okay, it does not sound like he's adding anything. Let's see what he says. He says going on. Mussar. So he says Yisurim. Okay, so he learns it as okay, the Yisurin, which translation is like afflictions, which is like bad, suffering that happens to you. Habaim al ha'evilim, that befalls evilim, him ba'avur ivatam, is on account of their foolishness. Okay, I think that's what Art Scroll was getting it from, but I deleted Art Scroll already. Yeah, okay, so what is he saying? Intellect, it's to his possessors, like a wellspring of life, because that's where life comes to him from it. And mussar befalls revealing on account of the foolishness. Yeah, Mom? Unless that's an accidental hand raise. Okay, I'm assuming Mom accidentally raised her hand. Oh, okay. All right, so what's the main idea here? It is very, very sparse because he's not adding much. The second half is easy in terms of what it means, right? Is that what it sounds like him. What phrase do we have in English where you fail to someone's trying to give you advice and you don't take their advice and then you get consequences, and you learn from that. That we call it learning the hard way, right? You can learn the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is you get advice and you take it. Learning the hard way is you make the wrong decision, you get the consequences, and then you learn from it. I don't know if they are, I don't even think he's, maybe this is where the JPS is getting from. I don't think he's translating the pasuk differently. So he's translating it as, is the intellect is a source of life to its possessors, but sorry, I keep on translating possessors, but the punishment, but the foolishness of the wicked is their punishment. I think we had an English translation that was like that. Is their punishment, right? So does that help us? Yeah, Ella?
Is he saying like physical, like positives and negatives? Like life
Okay,
versus
go on.
like
Yeah, I can see.
punishments or Yisurim?
Right. Yeah,
So
it does seem
I
like
don't
it's
exactly know, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's good. What's the subject according to him here also? Oh, sorry, I said the wicked. I don't know why I said the wicked. Fools. Okay, so the Havamina, okay, of the second half, meaning what we would think without the pasuk, is that we see the Evilim getting suffering, but we don't make the connection between that and their foolishness. Okay. I don't know if that gets us anywhere. But like that's why we have to be told the foolishness of the foolish of the fools is their punishment. Or maybe we think that their punishment is something else. Okay. Let's leave this to the side. Okay. We have this long Rabbeinu Yonah here, which looks important. Let me just skim it for a second here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and have faith in Rabbeinu Yonah that he's going to say something that's worth reading. But I have not read this yet, so we're gonna try this, and it's gonna be a little bit long. But let's just see where this goes here. Okay, so Rabbeinu Yonah, we're relying on you. All right, Rabbeinu Yonah. Okay, so Makor Chaim Seichel Balav Haseichel Hanasun Ba'adam. The intellect given to man, Makor Chaim Hu Labalav, is a source of life to those who possess it. To those who possess it. Lefi shehu roy lachkor lahavim b'sichlo hadrachim artsuim laborius ale ulehisratos elav bahem. Because it is proper for a person to investigate and understand with his intellect the proper ways, I guess the ways that are desirable to God, and to make himself hisratzos elav, to make himself favorable to him through them. Okay, so sounds like he's taking this in a religious / Jewish / Torah vein here, that it's talking about using your mind to figure out what God favors. Now that's not exclusively Torah, because obviously God has a will outside of Torah also. Okay, so that is the intellect is a source of life to its possessors. Okay, next is mussar evilim iveles. The mussar of evilim is foolishness. Even though the natural intellect implanted in man by toladato, its nature is to recognize the bad and the good, and to discern the desire, the ways that are favorable to God. Okay, Kamo Sha'amar, as it said, Aval Yachol Ha'adam La'ave Sichlo HaTivi. A person can corrupt his natural intellect, Ulasalif Yashro, and to warp, or to actually warp is a better thing. He can warp his natural intellect and corrupt its straightness. Al yedei hahergel hachem. Okay, you know what? Now I got to look at the critical edition, because I sense that that's a mistake. Yashro al yedei hergel hachemda v'habachira bara. Yes, there should not be a hey there. Okay, I sense my spidey sense went off. Through the habit of covetousness, or maybe that's really what chemda is. He might mean desire though. V'habachira bara, and choosing evil. Ki achrei shiachmod poel haveros, because once a person covets, transgressive actions, v'yivchar ba'avas harshayim, and chooses. Okay, now this might be another typo. Chooses the love of the wicked. V'yivchar ba'avas harshayim o b'chavrasim. Okay, so chooses the love of the wicked or their friendship. Again, we'll explain everything. We'll try to explain everything after this. Yahapach levavo, his heart will transform. The hod sichlo yahapach alav, and the glory of his intellect will reverse itself upon him. Lamashchis, for harm. Ki ataiva ta'avir ene hasechel, because emotions. Rivki, this is saying like what you were saying, the trap is. Emotions blind the eyes of the intellect. V'hachifetz v'hachemda, and desire and covetousness, yechalfu hahakara, will replace objective discernment. Al derech ma shenemar, as it is stated, Ki hashochid ya'aver, for a bribe blind blinds Yisalef divrei tzadikim Einei chachamim v'yisalef divrei tzadikim, blinds the eyes of the wise and corrupts righteous principles. Okay, that's Shemos 23:8. V'amru, let me just put this down in a different paragraph here. Okay, good. This is good, by the way. This is a good use of our time here. V'amru zal, and the sages said, Lo yireh adam chova la'atmo, a man does not see his own liability. Va'ohev lo yireh chova la'ovo, and a loved one, I guess a friend doesn't see the liability of his friend. Umipnei zeh, and because of this, mussar evilim, the mussar of evilim, kasher yochichun es chavrehem, when they rebuke their friends. So he's learning it as discipline, like disciplining someone, rebuke. Chavnu lahoros lahem haderech hanachona, intending to show them the proper path. Yilamdu osam la'asos hara lihizgaos v'lahaloch b'darche libam. They will teach them to do evil and to be haughty, become haughty. V'lahaloch b'darche libam, and to follow their hearts. V'la'ashok, and to cheat. V'lachmod, and covet. Ulahachlif olam omed ba'olam cholef, and to exchange eternal life for temporary life. Lefi sha'atzmo ha'avilim ene binasam, because is that a typo? No, otam enav. So it's closed. Yeah. Lefi sha'atzmo ha'avilim ene binasam, because the evilim have closed the eyes of their understanding, the satmu makor sichlam, and stopped up the wellspring. Oh, he's so poetic here. Wellspring of their natural sichlam ativi, their natural intelligence. Al yedei hataivos, through desires. Ad sheyorim sichlam al hara kidovu, to the point where their intellect will indicate to them that evil is good. Okay, now he quotes a bunch of proof texts. I don't know if I want to just Chadal b'ni lishmo mussar lishkos mimredas. Cease, my son, listening to mussar, which causes you to stray from words of knowledge. Barashayim gamkein darcham laharos panim lemusar ivaltam. Okay, and the wicked also show favoritism to the mussar of their foolishness. Shnemar ve'ata anachnu me'ashrim zedim gam nivnu ose risha gam bachnu elohim v'imaleto v'yikra mussar al das evilim. That's like what Rivki said, and it's called mussar from the perspective of the evilim. So it's like facetious, like Rivki was saying, and Sadion. Kamosh nikres avodazara tifatzelas umussar al das ovedeha mussar havalimetu tifatzlecha hesioscha asher asasa mifateles la'ashera. Okay, fine. All right, good. So let's summarize the main points of the Rabbeinu Yonah here. Okay, I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna quickly copy and paste this into the chat if I can. Sorry, that was a very long Rabbeinu Yonah, but forget it. We're not going to put this in the chat. Okay. All right. So what is his? Let's just do main points before we get the main idea. Main points here are God gave us an intellect that is naturally straight and capable of recognizing the difference between good and bad. Okay. However, we can corrupt it by constantly giving in to our desires and feeding habits of ego, covetousness, lust, and all of the other emotions, okay, which will blind the eyes of our intellect, causing us to to define good and bad based on our subjective emotions rather than objective reality. Okay, this is the Rambam's explanation of the tree of knowledge of good and bad, right? Meaning that it's not objective good and bad because that man had before the sin. This was subjective good and bad, that once they gave into their desires, then it colored the way that they see reality. And now they're defining things as good because it gives them pleasure, or they're defining things as bad because it gives them it takes away pleasure, it gives them pain, right? So that is the so that's how that's his premise. Okay, that's point number one. Okay, and then point number two is that because their intellects are corrupt, then even when they want to help their friends, okay, by giving them guidance for the good, they will, in reality, be directing them to harm because their own judgments are messed up by their emotions. Okay, so like an example of this is like if anyone has an example, you could jump in. I'm starting to get really tired. I mean, this happens like there's so many examples of this, right? But like people egging each other on to do things like, okay, let's use a Mishlei example in chapter 1 of like thieves. You know, thieves will encourage each other to steal because they've warped their intellect to think that stealing is beneficial for them, when in reality it's harmful on multiple levels. So they think they're helping out their friend by giving them advice, but really they're further corrupting them towards evil. You know, so it's being called mussar because they think that they're giving mussar that's beneficial, but it really is corrupt, right? So the question is like, what's the main idea? Okay, but those are his main 2 points here. I mean, it's a really good discourse on that problem. But what is the address of this? Like, what is the subject? Who's this for? I think that's also a question we should ask. Who's the audience? Right, because you see, it sounds like from what he's saying here, it sounds like the audience is someone who's prone to giving this kind of advice, but then that actually is an Aviel. So who is the audience? Yeah, Rifki?
I don't know if this is going to be helpful. It's just something that I never thought about.
Yeah.
That I like the first point a lot because I think that, like, you know, it kind of reminds me of the discussion, like, oh, like, you know, are we inherently good or inherently bad? And
Yeah.
it seems like this is saying, like, no matter, I don't know if I would say no matter how far, but like, even if you really mess up your mind and intellect, that because we're naturally wired to like try to think rationally and like use our mind to discern good and bad, that it's still like the underlying natural tendency. So you can undo that undoing of what you know, that wasn't said in the best way, but you see what
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. Meaning like if your premise here is that human beings are like some, you know, branches of Christianity say like are intrinsically corrupt and evil,
exactly.
then you're not returning to a state of pure intellect and good. You know, you're always corrupt. You have to like climb your way out and build up to something like that. But we hold, and I'm just quoting this pasuk in Koheles because I think it says it quite outright here. I feel like I recently quoted this in the shiur 7:29. Asher asa Elokim es Adam yashar. God made man upright. Vehema bikchu chishvonos rabim. But they sought many calculations, which you know, Rabbeinu Yonah would say means like you know, ways to satisfy their desires that are not in line with what is good. Yeah. Oh, there's a part that I actually forgot to write here. It's not just an intellect that's naturally straight and capable of recognizing the difference between good and bad. Is therefore we should use it to figure out what God's will is and align ourselves with that, thereby making our intellects even more hardwired to point to the good. Okay, not just capable of discerning it. Okay, so that's really the point. In other words, like your intellect is the tool that you can use to determine what is good and what is bad. So if you use it to determine what is good, and then you align yourself with the good, then you'll only become better at like recognizing the good and avoiding the bad. But if you corrupt your intellect, it's going to lead on a downward trajectory. I mean, this is what Chazal say, habalatar masayinoso and abalatame masayinoso, or whatever, that if you come to purify yourself, then you receive assistance. And if you come to make yourself impure, then you receive assistance, meaning your intellect's going to drive you to whatever you end up using it for. But what's the main idea or the practical application? I mean, I'll give one practical application, which is just not a chiddush, but just needs to be said, which is that I'll read it from Rabbeinu Yonah in another Rabbeinu Yonah that I always quote here. So he's talking about the parts of the soul. He says that in his scheme, there's like the instinctual part, the part that's hardwired to get its physiological needs, and then there's the like what we would call the psyche, the psychological part that strives for that gets angry and egotistical and strives for dominance and all that stuff. And then there's the rational part, okay? And this is not just Rabbeinu Yonah who says this. There's a lot of Rishonim who say it. Rabbeinu Yonah says it on Mishlei 122. But then he says, he says, Ki yitzer lev adam ra, the inclination of man's heart is evil. Okay, evil meaning in the sense that it is just seeking instinctual things. V'shoal hadvarim mimenu, it demands things of him. And it yearns for him to give it everything that he sees. And now here's the line: Ve'ein biyad hayetzer lamalos tishukaso b'lo haskamas hanefesh hamaskelas v'rayana. It is impossible for the animalistic inclination to fulfill its desire without the consent of the rational soul and its thought. And that's why the soul is punished when it gives into a desire. Okay, when it gives into a bad desire. So I think one idea is, non-chiddush idea is whenever you give in to an animalistic desire, you are corrupting your mind's ability to discern objective truth and objective right from wrong, because you're conditioning your mind to associate this pleasure with good, and you're blocking out the parts of you that recognize the harm in this action. So think before you act, but think twice about how your act will shape will corrupt your mind. And it's like this is the definition of rationalization. Like, you're taking something that is irrational and you're convincing yourself that it is rational. And I think when we rationalize, and most of the time when we rationalize, we don't even recognize it. But then other times we rationalize and we get so caught up in this action makes sense, but we don't think to ourselves, well, what if we're wrong and we've just corrupted our minds going forward, so like, in other words, don't just examine yourself for rationalizations of irrational or bad behavior, okay? But remind yourself that every time you rationalize going against what you know is good and true, you are further corrupting your intellect and weakening it as a tool, okay? And if you want to help your friends, okay, you'll only end up hurting them through the advice you come up with using your corrupt intellect. Okay, the thing that is perplexing me about him is this is a really fundamental idea about the intellect. I don't know and it's clear where he's getting the mussar part from. That's the second half of the pasuk. I don't feel like I get why these two ideas have to be joined. Like, it's a standalone idea of your intellect can be a source of life if you use it properly, and it could be corrupted if you don't. And then there's an idea of people who have rejected the life of intellect. When they try to give mussar to their friends, they're actually hurting their friends. But I don't see like the subject that like really unifies these ideas together. Okay. Unfortunately, I have to stop. I had insomnia last night, and I'm just at the end of my attention span and thinking ability. So let's just quickly review our ideas. So we had Rivki's idea, which is that the mussar, that because Evilim hate real mussar and chachma, they still will have mussar, which is also Rabbeinu Yonah's premise, by the way, which is that they will still try to like discipline themselves and discipline each other, but the tool they're using is not connected to the seichel main line, so it's not going to bring them life, and it's just going to keep on harming them. So in order to bring meaningful feedback into your stagnant bad state, you need an infusion of seichel to open up these new perspectives, and that'll at least give you the ability to like see new things and get out of that rut. Then there was Isaiah's idea, which is that if you see mussar being given by an avil, then even if it looks good, the fact that it's given by an avil should be a red flag, and you should have hypervigilance in examining it for how their evilus, their ivelus has might have affected it. Race's idea is that the avil has closed himself off to curiosity, because curiosity could lead to a result that threatens his lifestyle, or makes him realize he's wrong, or he's not as great as he thinks, or he can't do what he wanted to do. So he just shuts it all off, and that is going to make him stagnate. Whereas, a healthier non-avil mind will have a natural curiosity, and the more he turns to it, then the more he'll find that as a source of life. And then Rabbeinu Yonah's idea is that God made you with a mind that can discern the difference between good and bad objectively, and the more you use it to align yourself with His will, the better you'll get at it. But the more you pervert it by rationalizing your desires, the more you're going to corrupt the ability to use it properly to discern what's good and bad. And you'll think that the good is bad and the bad is good. And then when you give advice to your friends, you're actually going to be harming them, not helping them. Okay, so good ideas. I mean, tough here to get a chiddush. I mean, I feel like we've gotten a chiddush, like we've gotten certain ideas here, but it was tough pasuk. So I'm sure there's much more here, as is true for all the pasukim, but let's wrap it up for tonight. Okay, thanks for coming, and hopefully next week is on schedule. So nice seeing you all again. Take care. Have a good night.
Thank you.